is amazing to me. Household income jumps to all-time high. So household income jumps to all-time high. Consumer confidence is through the roof since the early 2000s. Unemployment is at historic levels, particularly for minorities. The GDP growth was actually 4.2% last quarter. Are you hearing any reporting on this? What a fantastic economy this is? Are you hearing anything about this? No, you're not. Or very little. It's part of the problem. Median household income is up more than 4%. The economy is growing fast. This is Investors Business Daily. Optimism is at decades-long highs. Not that you'd know it, since the press is too busy trying to drive President Trump from office. Inflation-adjusted median household incomes in July hit $62,450, according to the latest release from Cent-Year Research. That's the highest level since they started tracking this more than 18 years ago. Now, I can assure you if this was taking place during the Obama regime, you'd never hear the end of it. And if you combine Cent-Year's numbers with annual census data, median household income is at all-time highs. More interesting is the fact that median household income has shot up more than 4% in the 19 months since Trump took office. It had been flat over the previous year and a half. Over the course of President Obama's entire 8 years in office, listen to this, median household income climbed a mere 0.3%, a third of 1%, Cent-Year data show. And you have these liberal propagandists and demagogues all over the media telling us any growth, any reduction in unemployment that occurred during the Trump administration is thanks to Obama. Oh, yeah, the economy is really coming out of the tank under Obama. Obama did nothing to help the economy, smothered it. Overall economic growth is accelerating as well after years of Obama-induced stagnation. Yesterday, the Commerce Department boosted its estimate of second quarter growth to 4.2%. That means average growth for the first half of the year was above 3%. And if it continues strong in the third quarter, as it appears to be the case, chances are we will see growth for the entire year at or above 3%. That would be the first time in 13 years. This, too, is a sharp turnaround that just happens to coincide with the Trump presidency. In Obama's last year of office, GDP growth was an anemic 1.6%. The growth rate dropped in each of the last 2 quarters of that year, and economists were everywhere telling the public that 2% was the best we could do. Perhaps that's why polls are showing the public's mood better than it's been in many years. Examples. The Investor Business Daily TIPP Economic Optimism Index surged to a 14-year high this month. The Conference Board's Consumer Confidence Index just reached an 18-year high. The Conference Board also reports that job satisfaction is the highest it's been since 2005. A survey by Express Employment finds that blue-collar workers are more upbeat about the direction of the economy than the general public. Whatever one's view of Trump, this is undeniably good news. After years of so-called unexpectedly underperforming growth, the economy is giving every indication that it's returning to its vigorous norm. But instead of heralding this news, the mainstream press either ignores, downplays, or tries to explain it away. As we noted in this space recently, this Investor Business Daily, the New York Times and others keep trying to claim that the current boom was simply the continuation of growth set in motion during the Obama's years. There's a simple reason for this. The press is singularly fixated on bringing down Trump at all costs. Since good economic news will help Trump, it must be overlooked. That is exactly what's taking place. And it's not just Trump. Anything that shows that capitalism works and works well and works brilliantly for the vast majority of the American people needs to be trashed. Let me ask you this question. I ask a lot of questions, I know. Let me ask you this question. Why is there constant talk about socialism in the media and almost never talk about capitalism? Why is there constant talk about socialism in the media but almost never talk about capitalism? Isn't that amazing? If you really think about it, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? And so if you don't talk about capitalism in the media, true capitalism, if you don't talk about capitalism, true capitalism, in our public school system, if you don't talk about capitalism in universities and colleges, well, the only talk is to trash it. That explains in significant part why so many people reject capitalism. Even though if you look at it, there's so much to celebrate. Let us go to Ed, trucker, Kansas, XM Satellite. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm fine. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Well, what I was wanting to talk about is that I have noticed that it seems to be a grassroots from the bottom up thing with conservatism. And then when it comes to the liberal left, the Marxists, the socialists, it seems to come from the rich upper class, from some people up at the top. Have you noticed that?
Well, this is an interesting point, isn't it? In other words, they fund these efforts, and there's some of that on the conservative side too, but not nearly what goes on the left. Yeah, what you're saying is it's really quite amazing. You have, in many respects, these wealthy white leftists, highly educated, and quite stupid, by the way, who are ginning this kind of stuff up. You talk about white privilege, right? And they are ginning this kind of stuff up, and I think you're quite right. And I think this also explains why the media are so left. With these huge companies, mostly their boards of directors are filled with leftists. I mean, I remember when this company, the stations I'm on, many of them, not all of them, I remember when they were owned by Disney. And Disney had all kinds of libs on their board and so forth, and everybody was always looking over their shoulders, conservatives that is. And by the way, I never have to look over my shoulder now. But I think there's something right about what you're saying. There are exceptions, of course. All right, Ed, we appreciate your call. We'll be right back. So we have an economic boom of sorts in this country thanks to capitalism, thanks to the private sector. Job creation like we've not seen in recent times, thanks to capitalism and the private sector. Opportunities in communities where there were none, thanks to capitalism and the private sector. Socialism is an abstraction. It is a theory, and when it's put into practice, it is bleak. It is anti-human nature. It is cold. It destroys. That's why so many stupid people on TV and stupid people who are elected to Congress or want to be elected to Congress keep burping up its propaganda. In many cases, people who've never done a damn thing in the private sector and certainly haven't achieved anything.